Hello everyone and welcome back. You may recognize me, my name is Boone Williams. If you don't recognize me, I am a transgender lesbian. That's mostly what I make content about here on YouTube, but I also do some other stuff. I'm also an actor and just, you know, a human being. Today's video is inspired by a conversation I was having with my dear mother this morning. I was explaining to her about how since I've transitioned and through transitioning, I have learned to give less and less of a crap about small stuff. What I mean is, over time, faux pas and social things that used to give me a lot of stress or anxiety, or I would spend time late at night thinking about things that I did, oh, that was embarrassing or whatever, which used to happen all the time, that just doesn't happen. It's like I've been through this extreme experience, and one of these positive side effects is that I don't sweat the small stuff anymore. And my mom just said to me this would be a good YouTube video, and I think she's right, and it's something that I've touched on this channel a little bit before in different ways. I've talked a lot about confidence, how different parts of my transition have impacted my confidence, how it's gone up and down depending on where I was and what's helped and what not. And so I want to dedicate this video entirely to what my experience was like getting to where I am now, where I ultimately feel more confident than I probably ever have since coming out as trans, and maybe hopefully through that it will give some comfort and some insight into people who are newer in their transition. And if you're not trans at all, I mean, you're obviously welcome to watch this video. You might learn something, it might be interesting. Up to you. I'll start by saying that when I was in elementary school, when I was a very little kid, I say in elementary school, I was homeschooled, but you know, that age. Like, basically from the very beginning, I was a super confident kid. I was extremely energetic. I loved people. When we had company over, I made myself the center of attention all of the time. I had zero inhibitions about who I was or what I would do. I had no insecurity. I had no shyness. I would go up to any adult or whatever and try to make them laugh. I'd introduce myself to people. I was very personable. I really enjoyed putting myself out there in every way. I would say that I maintained that personality, that quirkiness, that energy, that willingness and ambition and lack of inhibition. No. Yes, a lot of inhibition, not lack of it. Wait, no. Lack of inhibition. I had a great lack of inhibition as a child. Anyway, that lasted until puberty. I was extremely social as a kid. I had tons of friends. I just felt that people liked me. I believed it, and I was confident in myself, and I didn't really have doubts about it. I didn't think about how I was coming across very often. You know, I had shyness that any other kid might have in certain situations. You know, I wasn't like some deity who had no inkling of fear or anxiety. I mean, that stuff existed within me. In fact, I started showing my first symptoms of OCD when I was 5, so it's not like I was like this perfect, you know, just absolutely mentally healthy, wonderful. That said, my personality I didn't feel was blocked or hindered by any kind of external anxiety or insecurity. I felt like I was totally able to be me unapologetically, and it was awesome. So when I turned 13, I'm homeschooled, mind you, so all of my friends kind of group off. They find their people in brick and mortar high school, you know, real high school. Most of my friends were girls, pre-pubescent. You know, if you're a guy and your friends are girls, a lot of the times that ain't a thing. And then as soon as you hit high school, it's like, or even middle school, you know, that hormonal 13, 14 age of 12 to 14, you're just kind of like, I don't know, I was totally comfortable being friends with my friends. I mean, I knew I was a girl from the time I was 8. I came out as trans when I was 13. It was sort of a very, it was like a step-by-step transitional process of coming out to different people, and I was very new to the term transgender, so it was more me trying to explain how I felt about myself, but I wasn't so familiar with that word to be able to very clearly come out. It was kind of this ambiguous thing. So my friends started to know, they were supportive, but it took a while, I think, for them to start seeing me as a girl. And then once I started to transition and get on hormones and start to feel and look more like myself, how I wanted to present myself as a woman, I still wasn't sure where they were, you know, because they knew me for so long, and I'm sure they had all these preconceived ideas about me being a guy, and especially when you get to that age where your hormones are raging, it's like, that's kind of a loaded big event to be a male friend at that age. Obviously I wasn't male, but again, even if they knew I was transgender, it was this transitional time that was kind of probably a little awkward for everybody. At 13, also a major thing that happened that I've talked about is my voice lowered. Look up B. Wesley on YouTube if you want. Go for it. You should see a little cartoon image drawing of me. It looks nothing like me. It's me at 12, but it was drawn on a computer. You might be able to recognize it. It's a very small channel. If you go back a few videos, I think there's a sweet spot before I started training my voice and after it lowered. You can hear how incredibly different it sounds. It became the biggest source of my dysphoria. I hated my voice. I didn't talk for a very long time unless I kind of had to. Like, I just avoided putting myself out there and expressing myself because I didn't feel like I could with that voice. I didn't feel like me. It was like, how can I have confidence and security and not be shy and uncomfortable when I have a voice that I don't feel represents me at all? I didn't feel like I could be who I was. I felt like as soon as I opened my mouth, I was suddenly misrepresenting myself. It took me like a good solid 4 years to get to a voice where I felt like, this is me. Not only is it quote passable, but it's me. I can just talk and feel comfortable. It's not about trying to survive and have a voice that just sounds like a cis woman. Not only does it do that, but it also feels like I can connect with it. Like I can take ownership over it and feel like when I'm speaking and hearing the words come out of my mouth, I am saying them and it's not affecting or limiting how I can express myself. So I won't go too in-depth about the roller coaster of it all and the experiences of losing confidence, gaining it. The gist of it is basically I started feeling super comfortable with myself. Puberty hit, my voice lowered. Hard time. This, even trans or not, you're gonna probably deal with some confidence going down and some insecurity. It was just a little extra complicated in my case. That lasted for a good while, and then in the earlier parts of my transition, I started dating a girl right away when I started on estrogen. I was legitimately, I think it was 2 weeks to the day after I started estrogen. I was really into this girl and it was a really exciting time for me and I was starting to feel more like myself, but one issue that I hadn't anticipated was when you start to have a serious relationship with someone, especially when it's an intimate one like that, and you've just started to step into your comfort, to yourself, what feels like you. You're still at the beginning stage. So as exciting as it is, it's thrilling, and you're so excited to celebrate that with other people, to start new relationships as this more comfortable version of yourself. However, what I didn't realize would happen was as time went on, being with someone who knew me during that very vulnerable beginning stage had this sort of mental pause for me, or block, where it kept me feeling like I was still at that stage long after I had moved past it. That relationship did end up ending, I was 16. It was kind of a situation where you're in high school and it's, probably not going to last anyway. We dated for about a year, and I made it very clear to me that I really needed to focus on myself, and I really need to focus on being just a person who's not with anyone, but is just me, myself, finding out everything that I like and value and want to do, and how I want to go and live my teenagehood as a young woman. The interesting thing about that relationship too is when I started, I wasn't necessarily passing all the time. I was sometimes, but I was still working on my voice. My hair was a lot shorter. I just wasn't as comfortable in general. By the end of the relationship, however, I was passing all the time, so I had some more comfort than I did at the beginning because I knew that. That said, again, there was still dysphoria attached to the relationship, and it became this really interesting thing, and I think the people you surround yourself during times of transition of any kind in your life are hugely significant, and I'm really grateful for all the relationships and friendships that I've been able to experience throughout that journey, but you do have to watch closely how different dynamics are affecting you and what you need to do for yourself. As I was transitioning, Over time, I started to gain more and more confidence in myself. I remember in the beginning feeling like if I wanted to go out, I had to have a full face of makeup, I had to have very specific feminine clothing on, and I had to talk in a very specific way. And so in some ways it helped me gain confidence over where I was before as that 13-year-old boy with the low voice, because I had moved on from that and I was at least starting to express myself in a way that felt like me. But that said, there was new challenges in that I felt like I was stuck in sort of this very rigid mold of womanhood that I had to stay in and maintain, and it was very fragile. If I did something wrong, if I raised or lowered my voice in a weird way, or didn't wear my hair right, or it was just like this extremely delicate little place that I couldn't do anything wrong in my mind, or else I'd suddenly lose the sense of validity and belonging in my identity as a woman. So over time, though, you know, things just get easier. The more you get used to it, you learn what makes you comfortable. I learned what I like to wear. I learned how I like to talk. I learned more what I cared about and what I didn't care about as much in general in life. You know, it was like this experience I needed to have of being very uncomfortable to learn what makes me comfortable. I experimented with clothes, makeup, all of these things, and eventually got to a point where I felt like, you know, I could be in sweatpants and a tank top and no makeup and, you know, talking a little more lower, like laid back voice or whatever, and like still be, you know, like I'm still a woman, like who cares? It's not insecure. I'm not insecure about it. This isn't making me question my gender. I'm just Boone. I'm here. I'm a woman, and yeah, sometimes I like to wear t-shirt and baggy men's jeans, okay? I don't think I actually own any baggy men's jeans. That was made up completely. It was just, you know, to make a point. So now I'm in a place now where I feel much more free to express myself however I want, and that can change on a daily basis. Sometimes I do feel like wearing a, you know, very traditionally feminine outfit, putting on a dress and doing a full face of makeup and having braided pigtails and whatever, and sometimes I'm just like, I'm gonna throw my hair up in a ponytail, I'm gonna put on a tank top and maybe yoga pants or jeans or sweatpants and some boots or whatever, and just get out the door, or sneakers, whatever. And I finally found like I have a real ownership over my voice, and I can change it, and I can go in to do lower crazy things like that and still not, you know, be insecure about it. Like I just feel like I've had all of these experiences of people misgendering me, and then getting kind of addicted to the high of people gendering me correctly, and then, you know, there's like the random misgendering after never being misgendered for months or years, and you realize the world is chaotic, and nothing anyone ever says or does should be able to affect your worth and who you are and how you identify and what makes sense to you. And the hardest lesson for me to learn is that I could get to a point where no one ever misgenders me ever, and everyone just fully accepts me as a woman, and that's what it is. And that wouldn't solve the problem. The thing that I really have to do is to accept myself and to be brave enough to say, yes, I am a woman. People are still trying to figure out what it means to be transgender. The world at large doesn't necessarily accept us, and we don't always have extremely successful ways of explaining the experience to cisgender people. But as long as I have the confidence and I think the bravery to say, yes, this is who I am, and no matter what you say, that's just how it is, sorry, the happier I'm ultimately going to be. And that's been the hardest lesson for me to learn throughout my transition, if you wanted to know. And to circle back to what I was starting with, the coolest thing I've noticed ever since I have started to go through the most uncomfortable, awkward, scary parts of transitioning, I remember when I went out for the first time by myself in makeup. I mean, it's terrifying. It's terrifying, and then it just gets easier. But when you get used to it becoming easier, when you see how much you're putting yourself out there, how vulnerable you are, and you still survive it somehow, you kind of get a sense of, I'm gonna be okay, and I can be me, and I'm gonna get through it no matter what. That's certainly what happened to me anyway, and I would be very curious to hear if other trans people can relate. Like now, it's almost an exhaustion. I think if I'm being more positive, and I do believe this is true, I think it more comes from an experience of learning about myself and the world and meeting lots of different people and seeing how different people react and coming to understand that you're never going to be able to change everyone's mind, but we're all human beings and we're all just trying to be ourselves in some way or another. That, in combination with the exhaustion of being embarrassed or nervous or scared or insecure or unsure, it's gotten me to this sort of blissful place of, screw it. Obviously, I still deal with insecurity. I don't want anyone to think I'm just like, I'm the coolest person ever, and I'm never anxious, and I'm never worried about how people perceive me, because obviously that's not true. I can be way too self-involved. I can care way too much about how people might be seeing my hair today. Like, what right now? Like, is my hair crazy? It's a little bit crazy, I don't know. And I still, you know, like, I'll leave my house without makeup all the time, but I still generally feel more comfortable when I have it. I mean, this is part of being a human. I guess now the insecurity and any self-confidence issues that come about are more just feel like regular, everyday human insecurities rather than the transgender specific thing, which adds an extra layer of complication. I just feel like I don't care as much. Like, I've embarrassed myself so much in my life. I've put myself out there in ways that have been really freaky, and since doing this YouTube channel and going through this transition very publicly, where I start out, you know, what people would see is just a man in women's clothing and makeup, and that's very freaky anywhere, even in nice parts of the world where they're more progressive and you don't expect to be confronted, which luckily I was in during that, and now I'm in LA and it's the same here, you know, where it's very progressive, but it's still, there's no way to transition from gender to gender in the public eye and not be freaked out in some way or another. But through that, I just feel like anytime I make a fool of myself or have an awkward interaction, or I find out like, oh, you know, like my fly was down or whatever, like I'm like, you know what, who cares? Like, I'm not gonna remember this tomorrow. I've been through worse. I've dealt with harder. My surgery too is like, that's not as much of, it is an emotionally vulnerable process, but that's also a very physically difficult process that, you know, there were moments in it where the pain was so bad, I'm like, and I don't want to freak anyone out if you're getting the surgery, but, you know, it's one of those things you're like, oh man, if I can get through that, I can get through some other trivial social weirdness. And so now I feel like I'm back to elementary school, Boone, in many ways. I mean, I've got adult life problems, you know, and things are different in many ways, of course. But that said, more than I have ever since elementary school, since being 5, 6, 7, I feel like I can just express myself without many limitations. I feel like that little kid again, and it feels so good, because for years I felt like I lost that. I lost this bubbly, friendly, optimistic, wide-eyed energy that I had as a kid that I think a lot of people enjoyed. I think a lot of people wanted to be my friend because of that, and I did have trouble making friends for a long time during high school because I didn't have access to that. I wasn't comfortable with myself, and people can sense that. The more comfortable you are with yourself, the more other people are going to be comfortable around you. So this has been a total ramble, you guys. It feels good to just ramble about, you know, transgender topics again. This is how this YouTube channel started, totally unscripted and just with what I wanted to talk about. So big thank you to my mom for inspiring me to talk about this. And if you all have other suggestions, if you have questions about anything transgender related, LGBT related, or not related to either of those things at all, I am trying to branch out too, so just let me know, and I'm gonna keep doing this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Wishing you the best. Mwah! And I will see you next time.